The day that Russia dreaded has arrived. For years, Putin's forces have been able to pelt Ukraine with glide bombs launched deep from behind the front lines. Now, everything has changed, and it's all thanks to Sweden. What Sweden just did for Ukraine is the most awesome thing that it or any country could have done, and it's come at just the right time. Something that terrifies Russia is on its way to Ukraine. Sweden just gave Ukraine superpowers, and it all comes down to the long arm. This is beyond insane. It's potentially war-ending. On May 28th, Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held a joint briefing to announce a major development. The deal is done. It's all official. 16 of Sweden's Gripen CD fighter jets are heading into Ukraine. And best of all, Ukraine won't have to pay a single cent to get its hands on these lethal Western fighter jets. This is a huge deal for Ukraine. It's receiving a fighter jet that was purpose-built to counter the Soviet airframes that Russia is predominantly using in its war against Ukraine. But the real difference maker isn't the Gripen themselves, it's the long arm that will be loaded onto these jets that creates the biggest problem that Putin's strategy has faced in years. Before we get to that, there's the deal itself. Delivery of the 16 Gripen CD fighter jets is expected to begin in early 2027. Though a condition is attached, Ukraine will only start receiving the jets once it has officially signed a purchase order for more Gripen jets that Sweden will provide in the future. Ukraine won't care about that. It fully intends to sign that document, which means the country's pilots are already gearing up to ensure they can use their latest weapon to inflict colossal amounts of damage to Putin's forces. This is a truly historic event, a historic day for our cooperation and for our countries, Zelensky said during the joint briefing, adding, "We're talking specifically about a squadron of Gripens for Ukraine, and this is tremendously important support for us." Ukraine's president also revealed that there will be an approximate 10-month lead time between the signing of this deal and the Gripens arriving in Ukraine, which gives Ukraine's pilots more than enough time to hone skills that they already started developing a few months ago. Those pilots can already fly Gripens. Now Ukraine is expanding its pilot infrastructure and sending even more pilots abroad to complete their training. And that's not all. We mentioned a certain condition a moment ago. Ukraine has to sign a purchase order for more Gripen fighter jets before it gets its hands on the jets that Sweden is donating. According to Kristersson, Ukraine is aiming to purchase another 20 Gripen fighter jets, with deliveries of those jets expected to begin at some point in 2030. But these aren't the same types of Gripens that Ukraine will receive in 2027. Those are Gripen CD models. The jets Ukraine intends to buy, in a deal reportedly worth around $2.9 billion, are Gripen EF models. Newer jets, stronger jets. The perfect jets for delivering a message to Russia that Ukraine intends to not only bring the power of Sweden's monstrous fighter jets to bear against Russia in the near future, but it will also ensure it has a strong fleet of them ready to go if Putin or his cronies get any dumb ideas about invading Ukraine again in the future. That deal will be made possible by a substantial loan from the European Union, which was approved in April following elections in Hungary that finally removed Russian ally Viktor Orban from power. With Orban gone, Hungary dropped the veto that had been preventing around $106 billion flowing into Ukraine. Seeing the writing on the wall, Slovakia also dropped its veto, removing the final hurdle standing in the way of the arrival of a cash injection that Ukraine sorely needs. Almost $3 billion of that money will go toward Gripen fighter jets. They, along with the 16 older models that Ukraine will receive, can make a massive difference for Ukraine in several ways. The long arm is one of them, and we'll be getting to that in a minute. But what will worry Putin more than anything is that Gripens arriving in Ukraine means that an air force he believed would be of no concern to Russia when he launched his invasion is getting more modern and a whole lot more dangerous. The 16 Gripens Sweden will send to Ukraine in 2027, along with the 20 more that Ukraine plans to purchase, will join an ever-expanding fleet of Western-made aerial firepower that has been transforming the sky battle in the Ukraine war. Ukraine currently has around 40 F-16s, which have been donated by its Western partners in Europe. Those 40 jets amount to around half of what Ukraine has been promised, as F-16s from Belgium and Norway are still waiting to be transferred. Belgium is waiting for the arrival of F-35s that it purchased from the US, and Norway is dealing with repair work that is taking longer than anticipated. Once those obstacles are removed, Ukraine's air force gets even stronger. Plus, Ukraine has at least 5 Mirage 2005F aircraft operating in its skies. The incoming Gripens add to that firepower. Not bad for a nation that had little more than some older Soviet aircraft when Putin's forces invaded back in February 2022. As important as these other Western models are, their major drawback is that they're perhaps not quite as adept at handling the sort of warfare that Ukraine is fighting against Russia. The same can't be said of the Gripen. This fighter jet is the perfect addition to the Ukrainian Air Force for all sorts of reasons, starting with the long arm. That particular benefit changes everything in Ukraine, but before we explain why, this is a quick reminder that you are watching The Military Show. If you're getting value from our channel, remember to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos. We've teased it long enough, it's time to reveal what the long arm is, and we only need one word to do it: Meteor. According to the deputy head of the President's Office of Ukraine, Pavlo Palisa, the Gripens that Ukraine is set to receive from Sweden will all be loaded with the long-range Meteor air-to-air missile. But most importantly, Gripen with Meteor missiles on board will be the long arm of our invasion, which will allow us to drive away Russian cab carriers from the front. This is an invaluable strengthening of both our aviation and the protection of infantry, Palisa declared on Telegram, offering a hint as to why the long arm will be so critical to Ukraine's plans for dealing with the aerial threat that Russia poses. It's not just about the offensive capabilities that the Swedish jets pose. With the Meteor, Ukraine has a weapon that can stop Russian glide bombs in their tracks, not by hitting the bombs themselves, but by doing something so lethal that Russia won't be able to launch any more of them again. The Meteor is the perfect missile for that particular task, as Euromaidan Press points out. The Meteor has been long considered one of the most advanced air-to-air missiles in the world, not least because it can travel dozens of kilometers to strike targets that are deep behind the front lines. MBDA, which manufactures the missile, offers the basic specifications. Weighing 190 kilograms, this isn't a missile that Ukraine will use to destroy hardened positions. Packs firepower, sure, but it's not delivering hundreds of kilograms to a target. The Meteor's stock in trade is immense precision combined with enough strength to take out very specific types of targets. Deployable in several types of fighter jets, with the F-35, French Rafale and the Eurofighter Typhoon adding to the Gripen as compatible platforms, the Meteor is a beyond visual range missile, which is key to Ukraine's strategy. With other air-to-air options, Ukraine's Gripens would have to get within firing range of Russian air defenses or airframes before they can unleash their payloads. Not so with the Meteor. A Gripen can rattle off one of those missiles and Russia won't even know what's happening until the missile is bearing down on its target. When the Meteor arrives at its target, it unleashes a sophisticated blast fragmentation warhead that has been specifically designed to incapacitate enemy aircraft. That's a little clue as to how Ukraine is going to use its long arm to deal with Russia's glide bombs. A combination of RF proximity and impact fuses allows the Meteor to hit targets in multiple ways, while the fragmentation warhead ensures the delivery of damage across a wide target area, increasing the chances of success. There is simply no escape from the Meteor, and the situation is made even worse for Russia due to the missile being able to travel at speeds above Mach 4. A target can run and it can try to hide, but that sheer speed means that it isn't going to outrun the Meteor. In-flight course corrections can be provided to the missile via a data link, and it uses inertial navigation during its mid-course flight to stay on target. As the Meteor hits the terminal phase of the flight, it switches to using an active radar seeker for autonomous guidance. In other words, the missile locks on and destroys. And with a range of up to 200 kilometers and a no-escape zone of 60 kilometers, destroying its target is what the Meteor does far more often than not. So the Meteor is a problem for Russia, both because of its strength and how Ukraine intends to use it. But behind this problem is a far bigger issue. It's not just that the Meteor missiles can help Ukraine to take glide bombs out of the equation, and you're going to learn how very soon. The Gripen jets that fire these missiles are also perfect for Ukraine, perhaps more than any other Western airframe the country has received. Why? Well, it's cheap, fast, and offers the sort of responsiveness to developing threats that Ukraine has cried out to have for years. What makes the Gripen so special is that it combines versatility with a design that makes it ideally suited for dealing with Russia's aerial strategy. That latter point shouldn't be a surprise, as the jet was built to confront the challenges posed by Russia's Soviet-era airframes. But the same could be said of other Western fighters. The Gripen stands apart from every other jet Ukraine has in its arsenal because it doesn't need the large and prepared runways that the likes of the F-16 and Mirage require. A Gripen can take off from much shorter runways, to the point where it's versatile enough to take to the skies from a short stretch of highway if the situation calls for it. That matters for a few reasons. First, it means that the Gripen can respond more quickly than any other jet in Ukraine's arsenal to an incoming threat. Time is gained due to fewer runway operations, so a Gripen can be in the air, shooting down incoming drones, while an F-16 is still on the ground awaiting confirmation that it's safe to take off. Second, think about how Russia is most likely to take out a Gripen. It isn't shooting one down in the skies. The Meteor and its beyond visual range capabilities make sure of that. Russia's best shot is to target the airfields where Ukraine keeps its Gripens. The jets will be protected from threats by hardened hangars most of the time, but the short period between transfer from the hangar and takeoff is always a problem. The shorter that period is, the less chance there is for a Russian missile to score a hit on one of Ukraine's new Swedish jets while it's on the ground. All of this means that with the arrival of the Gripen fighter jet, Ukraine could respond to Russia's aerial threats almost instantly. And it gets better. Insanely fast turnaround times are also a key feature of the Gripen. According to Ukrainian pilot Vadim Voroshilov, who once said that the Gripen was the only fighter jet that he would sell his soul to fly for his country, the airframe can be refueled and rearmed in as little as 10 minutes in ideal conditions. When dealing with something like a drone attack, that means the Gripen can fly a sortie, take out drones as it goes, touch down, get refueled and rearmed, and then be back in the air for the second sortie to take out another wave of drones. You might think that all of this means that the Gripen is more expensive to operate than a comparatively limited jet, such as the F-16, but that isn't the case either. In a comparison of cost per flight hour, Defense Express revealed that the Gripen is one of the cheapest modern fighter jets to operate. The Gripen CD jets that are heading into Ukraine in 2027 cost $20,600 to fly per hour, the outlet proclaims. Even the newer Gripen EF airframes that will start arriving in Ukraine in 2030 cost just $22,100 per hour. As for the F-16, specifically the F-16V, that jet costs $25,600 per hour to fly when taking maintenance, crew, fuel, and logistics expenses into account. Sure, it's not a massive difference at first glance, but over hundreds of hours of sorties, a $5,000 per flight hour saving adds up to hundreds of thousands and eventually millions of dollars in very short order. For Ukraine, which is trying to pinch as many pennies while being as effective in the air as possible, that sort of saving is nothing to be sniffed at. Zelensky summed it all up back in October 2025 when news broke that Ukraine was trying to acquire Gripen fighter jets. Gripen maintenance is the cheapest because the smallest number of personnel is required. For our pilots with qualifications and experience, it's not a year and a half of training like with the F-16s, but 6 months. All the technical capabilities related to takeoff and landing are also advantageous. They can take off and land on roads, Ukraine's president declared. No wonder Voroshilov said he'd sell his soul to get into the cockpit of a Gripen. Now he'll be beaming from ear to ear knowing that could happen without any sort of Faustian pact being needed. What will make Voroshilov and Zelensky even happier is that the long arm that comes with the Gripen is capable of dealing with a threat that has been causing problems for Ukraine. We mentioned earlier glide bombs. Russia's aerial strategy for much of the war has been to send its fighter jets, primarily its Su-34s, up into the air to unleash Soviet-era bombs that have been converted into medium-range munitions using specially designed wing kits. The advantages are clear. The Su-34s don't have to get close to Ukrainian air defenses to launch these bombs. They simply go up, fire, and then land. And despite not being the most accurate weapons in the world, glide bombs often pack several hundred and sometimes thousands of kilograms of destructive force. When they're being fired at Ukraine's cities, accuracy isn't as important as the sheer destructive power. Russia has been steadily increasing the number of glide bombs that it launches at Ukraine, and it tends to fire several thousand of them each month. March 2026 was a banner month for Putin's strategy. Russia launched 7,987 glide bombs at Ukraine in that month, amounting to an average of almost 258 per day, and over 1,500 more of these devastating weapons that Russia launched during its last record-breaking month, the previous February. Ukraine has to do something about this glide bomb problem. The long arm provides Ukraine with a solution to a long-standing problem. The Gripen Meteor combo means that Ukraine can fire a weapon that is designed to take out Su-34s and similar aircraft dozens of kilometers behind the front lines. What this means is that the Russians risk boundary changes. Before the arrival of the Meteor, a Russian pilot could take to the sky up to 100 kilometers away from their glide bomb target and feel fairly safe. Now these types of sorties carry a new kind of risk. Every Su-34 that takes off within range of Ukraine's Meteor missiles is at risk of being shot down, both before and after it unleashes its devastating cargo. The entire calculus of Putin's aerial strategy had to change, and Ukraine is counting on that fact. With Gripens and Meteors, Ukraine hopes to push Russia's airframes so far back that their glide bombs become useless. That would be huge for Ukraine. A massive weapon would be taken out of Russia's arsenal, which in turn means that Ukraine can coordinate its defense on the ground without having to worry about bombardments of massive bombs disrupting its planning. As Fabian Hoffman, who is a senior researcher at the Norwegian Institute for Defense Studies, puts it, the Gripen CD with Meteor, in principle, offers the best capacity to counter Russian glide bombs before they are launched, that Ukraine realistically has access to. Combine the Gripens with Ukraine's electronic warfare, which is already doing a good job of countering Russia's glide bomb threat, and Putin has a major problem on his hands. Ukraine's middle-range strategy, which has seen it unleash a new generation of mid-range drones on Russia, has already been causing chaos for Putin's forces. The Russian spring offensive that was supposed to define 2026 is being pinned back and countered due in part to Ukraine using these drones to take out Russian command posts and logistics behind the front lines. Throw Gripens and Meteors into the mix, and it becomes even harder for Russia to do damage to Ukraine's defenses. That means two things for Ukraine. Russia's offensives are stalled and opportunities for more counterattacks emerge. Ukraine has already liberated 590 square kilometers of its territory in 2026 so far, Zelensky claimed toward the end of May. A lot more will follow if Russia isn't able to pen Ukraine's forces back with its seemingly never-ending glide bombs. And it's not like the Gripen is only capable of dealing with Russia's glide bombs. As the Kyiv Independent points out, the fighter jet can be equipped with a range of missiles, including AIM-120 AMRAAMs, AIM-9 Sidewinders, and IRIS-T weapons. So Ukraine has options. One sortie could see a Gripen dealing with drones or hardened targets. The next could see it send Meteor missiles hurtling at airframes that Putin relies upon for his glide bomb strategy. We told you that Gripens arriving in Ukraine could be a war ender. This versatility, combined with how Gripens play into Ukraine's medium-range strategy, is the reason why. It's all about whittling away at Russia's offensive options. The weaker that Russia's attacks become, the better the results attained by Ukraine's defenses, and the more opportunities for territory-grabbing counterattacks emerge. All that Ukraine needs to do now is continue the good work it's done for much of 2026, as it awaits the arrival of its first delivery of Gripen fighter jets from Sweden. When those jets arrive, the game changes. Russia isn't ready for any of it. Not that Ukraine's troops in Mala-Tokmachka needed the help of Gripens and Meteors. They're more than capable of shattering the Russian offensive on their own. For more than 4 years, the defenses at the tiny village of Mala-Tokmachka have held out against Russian attacks, leaving a burning trail of armor, drones, and soldiers in their wake. Russia's most embarrassing battlefield stalemate has been exposed, and you can learn the full story by watching our video. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe to The Military Show to see more of our coverage of the latest developments in the Ukraine war. And thank you as always for watching.